moving forward.
One of the big things we heard over this weekend was the report about Shedeur Sanders, where it started with Ian Rapoport, a big, kind of exclusive, saying that the Browns are preparing for Shedeur to play at some point this year. I just quickly want to touch on the Mimegate thing, where I still think it's the most overplayed, ridiculous story. And the reaction to it on both sides were crazy to me. Like, there was just nothing measured about that conversation. It was just a lot of people yelling at each other online. The funniest conspiracy theory I had about it, though, was that Shedeur was taking the Browns literally. That the Browns told Shedeur, we don't want you talking about this. Just say no comment or just say I'm happy for Dylan. And then that maybe he took them literally. So here's the verbiage. In the Ian Rapoport piece, sources say Sanders had a discussion with team officials that his approach to the media session was a message that got lost in translation. So basically, they said, don't say a word about it. And he's like, I don't know how to do that. I'm going to pantomime talking. How can we not? That's funny. That is very, very funny.
It's funny. It's also funny that they got Rapoport to even report on that.
Yes.
That's the funnier side of things.
Well, and so every part about this was very much there was no way this wasn't leaked from the Browns.
Yeah.
Like, every part that you read about this screamed, it wasn't an agent, it wasn't, Shedeur himself, it wasn't Dion. It was clear that this was made from the Browns, and I do think that's what's interesting about this, is because I think any time the Browns leak any report about Shedeur, it ends up backfiring, even if it's a well-intentioned one like this, which is to tell Shedeur fans, hey, we're going to play your guy at some point this year. Just be patient.
Well, and I'm sure a lot of people think like myself. It's like, yeah, Jimmy Haslam already told us he was going to play this year. Like if you just listen to Jimmy Haslam, we'd have both quarterbacks be playing. I know in the past couple weeks, though, I became a little bit more hesitant to the idea that he actually would see the field, because there just became a part of me that wondered if they were just going to... I honestly didn't know that they'd move away from Flacco as early as they did, even though I kept telling everyone after 4 weeks is when they had to actually figure that out. I just didn't know that they'd actually do it.
You ever notice how with the Browns, nothing is ever simple? It's like every decision turns into a storyline. Every headline becomes a circus act. Instead of moving with quiet confidence like a professional ball club, they always seem to be wrestling with confusion, leaks, and mixed messages. And at some point, you've got to ask, why all the drama? Why can't it just be clean, focused football? Because when leadership loses clarity, chaos becomes the culture. And that's what we keep seeing play out in Cleveland.
It's what I would do. I was surprised they actually did it. But with this, the part that got me was in this report, Rap Sheet talks about how his development is happening every day, and while we had a long way to go upon arriving as a fifth-round draft pick from Colorado, Sanders has worked and he's learned. They're trying to rewrite that initial narrative that was out there that basically Shedeur is wasting everyone's time. And the only part that gets me a little angry is that you took a quarterback in the 5th round. You're going to tell everyone that he's just a 5th round quarterback, and you're going to then try to get all the credit for how he looks once he plays. That's the part that bothers me the most. It's a sleight of hand that I knew was coming from a million miles away, and it's going to paint them to be the savior of this quarterback that didn't actually need saving.
It's also the Eric Andre shooting the gas and being like, who could do this? Like, hey, we're going to try and rewrite that narrative that we ourselves propagated,
the coming from inside the house, guys.
And here's the thing. They didn't create the pre-draft narrative. They created the post-draft narrative on Shedeur, which was insulting, trying to act like there was a massive difference between Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders when both guys were incredibly experienced college quarterbacks. And Shedeur actually fits Kevin Stefanski better than even Dylan does.
It's one of the reasons why we first, at least I first started championing for Shedeur Sanders, is because he fits Stefanski and the connections that are there, even between his OC and everything else that was there at Colorado. But it is wild to me how they're going to try to spin this in such a way to make it seem like they fixed Shedeur Sanders, when I'm never going to look at it that way.
So I think you're right that if everyone survives to the end of the season and Shedeur plays well at the end of the season, and that gives them hope to maybe not draft a quarterback next year, and Shedeur maybe and Dylan, they compete for the job, however they kind of play out. I think your instincts are correct if they get there. I don't know after yesterday. I don't know Kevin's definitely going to make it to the end of the season. And I think that's going to be a really interesting... That's going to be a really interesting development to see if Kevin loses the locker room. Do you give him the rest of the season, or at some point when you go to Shedeur, then maybe you give him Tommy Reese, which also allows Tommy Reese to audition for other jobs as well.
I'm okay with that if that happens.
I just don't. If you're like a Shedeur fan, I don't know how you can trust Kevin Stefanski play calling for Shedeur when I think Kevin did any favors for Dillon Gabriel yesterday.
So maybe I looked at it too much from Stefanski's lens. I look at it from Stefanski's lens of that's my ace up my sleeve. That's my when I feel like I'm about to get fired. Sorry, Dillon Gabriel, you lost your job. Now here Shedeur comes in, and Shedeur being because he's not a 5th round quarterback, guys. Let's get real. Shedeur's going to step in and it'll look much better. Plus, you have that easy stretch up until that Buffalo game late in the season. You have a pretty easy stretch. The Browns could really have a quarterback go in there and look pretty decent. And I think he's going to look at that as like that's how I save my job.
Do you think that yesterday, because one of the big the next big push and pull is if Dillon is adequate, how long does that buy patience from fans if adequate isn't getting wins?
Oh, we had a caller last hour say they should have drafted Will Howard.
Yeah. And I mean, we had another caller we didn't end up getting to because we had so many calls in the early part of the show. Humble brag, what up? But that wanted to say, like, when are we going to put Shedeur in?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like, most of the time when it comes to quarterbacks, if it's an incumbent quarterback, in this case it's a very short-term incumbent quarterback, most of the time you're really only calling for, if a guy's playing well but losing, you're really not calling for him if you're looking and being like, well, no one catches the passes, the offensive line's terrible, the play calling and the coaching decisions, game management isn't helping him, the defense has a great defensive line but it's not a great defense from the back seven. Like, those are all things that incumbent quarterbacks get the benefit of the doubt of. I don't know how long fine while losing buys Dillon Gabriel, and I think that's why this felt a little premature. It's like, I don't know why you're trying to appeal to Shedeur fans who are pissed at you right now because they don't think you're treating that quarterback right. I don't know why you're trying to do that when I don't think you're going to see Shedeur for at least another 5 weeks, even if Dillon is worse than fine and you're losing.
And here's the part that they're not accounting for, though, because if Dillon does, in fact, play out the way that he did the first game, where you lose a lot and he's not really even threatening to go deep, he looks, I called it acceptable. If he looks like somewhere in that range, you then have to justify why you thought Dillon Gabriel was better than Shedeur.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is where the Kevin Stefanski rubber meets the road. I do wonder, one of the things we've said about Kevin consistently is he's just so stubborn. And there is a cockiness, nay, arrogance to him at points.
Could Haslam just say your decision-making was so awful and thinking Dillon was better than Shedeur, I have to fire you based off of not only all the losing and everything associated with it, but that's also just a little notch on the belt there?
I mean, I think it might. So yes, to answer your question, because that's a straight-ahead question and fair to ask for a response, I also think it might be if you get 7 weeks in and Dillon never looks better than adequate and you're 0-7 and Kevin's still saying we got to keep playing Dillon Gabriel because Shedeur's not ready. I don't know how I can trust. I don't trust Kevin Stefanski now to make that decision. I thought the entire handling of this process has been semi-insulting to Shedeur, and Semi is definitely couching it. It's been insulting to Shedeur. Just distinguishing between these two guys as if there's some wide gap between either guy is, if there is, physically, Shedeur is the far superior talented quarterback than Timu Tua. But like, you lose a lot of games with Kevin's handpicked quarterback. Again, it doesn't matter if because if you're losing and you're playing fine, we're just going to think you're a backup. We're going to think you're Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville. If Kevin continues to go, nah, we got to give Dillon a chance, or Shedeur's not ready, that in and of itself becomes a landmine for him.
Yeah, no, I just thought this was the first olive branch to the idea that they feel like they're coaching Shedeur up and the light bulb is going on for Shedeur and all the rhetoric that I just never really bought into, that Shedeur's light bulb needs to go off to begin with anyway, you know? But I feel like you have to start it from somewhere, right? You can't tell everybody, and they told everybody, because you got text, I got text, we got text all through training camp and all this other stuff that Shedeur didn't know what the hell he was doing, etc. You can't tell everybody those type of messages and then continue to keep going down that road and then say now he's our starting quarterback. You have to slowly but surely say, oh no, things are starting to happen. Shedeur looks really good. Hey, how about those extra periods that is going on after practice that Ross Tucker told us about? You think that was an accident a week ago, or 3 weeks ago, because I was off for 2 weeks? You think that was an accident? That wasn't an accident. Like they're starting to build up the narratives that it's starting to click for Shedeur. And I don't think, I think it's very intentional because ultimately they're going to want to take credit for it if Shedeur looks good.
Well, and here's the other.
Get a load of all this, family. No one is going to believe that Cleveland had anything to do with our nephew Shedeur Sanders' development. They are not getting off that easy. Because if you've been watching from the start, you know the story. You've seen the discipline, the work ethic, the consistency. This young man was coming in early, leaving late, and putting in extra work with people who don't even play football, just to sharpen his focus and stay ready. That kind of dedication doesn't come from a playbook. It comes from purpose. They denied him first-team reps for the longest time, like they couldn't see the gift standing right in front of them. They treated him like he had no value, like everyone else was somehow better, more experienced, or more ready. But what they failed to realize is that you can't downplay destiny. When God calls you to something, you don't need their approval because his preparation is already complete. And honestly, this is the first time I've heard anything positive said about our nephew Shedeur Sanders, outside of Garrett Bush, Skip Bayless, and a few others who had the courage to see what was really there. Because let's be honest, the rest of the crowd had already written him off. They said he was just a fifth-round pick, riding off his father's name, a so-called Nepo baby. But they missed it. They completely missed it. Because you see, favor doesn't look like what people expect. It doesn't need a press release. It doesn't need a stamp of approval. And it definitely doesn't need validation from folks who never believed in you to begin with. Purpose doesn't need permission. When God puts his hand on someone's life, there's nothing man can do to erase that mark. No rumor, no doubt, no politics in the front office can stop what he has already ordained. And that's why we stay grounded in truth, family. Because at the end of the day, no report, no leak, and no carefully crafted narrative can hide what God has already revealed. Shedeur Sanders never needed anyone to validate his worth. He's been showing it through quiet work, through unshakable character, and through consistent performance. Even when they tried to limit him, he kept preparing. Even when they underestimated him, he kept producing. Because when you're chosen, the delay is never denial. It's just development on God's clock. What the world is witnessing now is simply the evidence of what we already knew. When purpose is real, it doesn't wait for opportunity. It creates it. It doesn't seek a platform. It becomes one. And no matter how they try to spin the story, the truth always finds its way back to the light. Because you can't manipulate God's timing or rewrite his glory. Only what you do for Christ will last. Spoken by Eden Marie.